Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, this is definitely based on like a ton of you guys requesting this. And by a ton, I mean like 5 people, but you know, it's enough people to where I think it's valid. And just in general, like a lot of people that I work with and family members want me to talk more about fitness related things because obviously fitness related things is like my specialty. So for anyone that doesn't know, in case you're wondering like what are my qualifications to even be talking about fitness things. So I have a master's degree in sports and health sciences. My thesis was primarily centered around whole foods, diets versus supplementation and using performance enhancing substances. Also, in addition to that, I also have 3 personal training certifications. One that's just like a generic one, and then another one that is specifically around weight training, and then the third one is around assisting people with different disabilities. And then on top of that, I've also just been competing on a, I guess like semi-amateur level in college. I competed in racquetball for multiple years and then had a sponsorship through Echelon for an additional season after college. Then after I joined the military, I competed in severe endurance sports. So I've done ultras, marathons, triathlons, half irons, full Ironmans, and so just a ton of that. Was sponsored for triathlons through Try Everything LLC for a season. So just really like a lot of different things. I think I can somewhat talk on the subject. I've been hesitant to get into it just because I don't want to be one of those creators that just because I have at least a modicum of knowledge, I'm just gonna like toss out some random thing on like, hey, here's a workout you can do and 2 weeks from now you're gonna be shredded. It's fucking bullshit. And I really, really hate when people exploit the needs and goals that individuals have just to make a quick buck. That weighs very heavily on me. Like I care a lot about, you know, helping people, but making sure that it's done the right way. Anything that I put out there, like if you want to try something or if you have questions, please message me, ask me questions. Don't just go out there and try something because I happen to say, hey, this worked for me, and then you go out and do it and it's something that you're not ready to do yet and then you get hurt. I would hate that. As I do start to get into adding fitness content in here, I will always have a disclaimer at the beginning of the video, just so that you guys understand. I want to make sure that this is done the right way. Like I will never just push out some generic programming to you guys and be like, this is gonna do it. That's not how it's gonna be. So now that that rant is over, okay, I get so mad when I see these influencers out there that are using their platform and people are getting hurt and getting sick. It just, it fires me up so much. So okay, what we're gonna do today is I'm gonna just be doing my makeup in the background because I still want to like do a get ready with me and work on my makeup and look pretty. But I thought that a great topic to start off with would be talking about sports psychology and how the mental aspect of training and competition is so critical to your success. It literally, it can make and break you. And especially like once you get into that upper echelon of athletes where they are professionals, it's no longer a question of, do you have the athletic ability? Obviously you do if you're a professional athlete. And so then at that point, it is 100% where do you stack up mentally? Are you able to handle the stress and the pressures that come with competing? Or are you going to be someone that chokes and caves under that pressure? And so the mental game is such a critical element to address. I think it's something where at all levels, regardless of whether you're a professional athlete or not, having that solid mental game is really important, because your attitude and your thoughts, I mean, they're what get you out of bed in the morning. If you don't have a positive mindset when it comes to training and athletics in general, you're not going to do it. And so I think that's one of those things where it's really important to just kind of get into talking about like, why are people interested in working out in the first place? Why is it something that people enjoy doing? I've got my whole page of notes so that I stay on track, because oh boy, I can get off on tangents on these kinds of subjects. So I'm gonna start doing my makeup and we're gonna start talking, because I've noticed in the past when I do get ready with me type videos that I'll just keep talking and like the makeup never happens. So it's just something to, like, I guess to have you guys watch while you listen to me talk. So I'm gonna start with my eyes. I'm gonna use a Linda Hallberg palette that I just got. It's super duper pretty. Like, look at the greens and the gold. So I think the first thing to kind of talk about is even just the motivation to do anything, right? I think that motivation has many different layers to it, but to start with, the most common thing that people typically talk about is whether you are intrinsically or extrinsically motivated, which is just a super fancy way of saying, do you have your own internal reasons why you do something, or do you need external stimulation to get you to do something? Really basic examples for myself. I am, when it comes to working out, intrinsically motivated. I do it for myself because I like to push myself both mentally and physically. And so for me, I don't need a whole lot of external things to get me to do anything working out wise, right? Because I just really enjoy it. And it's one of those interesting things where, depending on what type of athletic activity you enjoy, that mindset might change, right? So when I was doing triathlons and marathons, my motivation internally for why I was doing that was very different than why I do weightlifting now. And so the endurance stuff, my motivation came from having a lot of pent-up anxiety and depression that I was struggling with, and being able to go out and just do extreme endurance work, where it's literally, when you're doing that kind of training, you sort of get to the point of where you're putting in so many hours that your brain can just kind of turn off. You don't have to think about anything. You can, I mean, I definitely used that time while I was training to attempt to process some of the things that I had going on, but there were also just hours upon hours where I would just lose all sense of time, and it was just me out there just running or biking and just breathing fresh air, and that was it. At the time, that was something for me that was incredibly important, just to get rid of that pent-up anxiety. And so for me, burning off all of that internal energy, like I wouldn't be able to sit still, like I would just be bouncing all the time. Like it was something that was incredibly noticeable, where coworkers and friends would comment that they were like, I can't even focus on you while you're talking, because I was just bouncing all the time. And so doing this extreme endurance stuff helped me to process all of that and to burn off the energy. And so it was very much an internal desire to get some kind of balance and control over my situation. Whereas with the weightlifting, definitely more of a like instant gratification type thing, versus with long distance training, you really, aside from your times where you're like clocking things, there's not a ton of ways to see improvement aside from just that like you're able to handle doing longer distance, but it's very much a over time type of thing. Whereas with weightlifting, from day one, you can just see immediate like results, because you're either able to immediately start doing more repetitions or more sets, or you're able to have your weight start going up, or you start to see more muscle definition. And so it's one of those things where every day there's a way for you to see how you're getting better. And so that was something that from the mental side of things was very pleasing to me, because I really liked how much easier it was for me to just be like, oh yeah, I'm totally getting better at this, because I can see it and I can feel it. And so that was kind of what started me with weightlifting on the internal side. And so regardless of how well I would do in competitions, that was never really something, I mean, I am competitive, and so I do have that drive to like need to beat other people, but that was not the primary reason why I was doing something. Whereas if someone is, you know, externally motivated, they need that, like they need the medals and the trophies and the praise and whatever else, you know, they need those external things to help motivate them to continue on. And that was actually something that was very interesting to me when the corona stuff started, was that I noticed that even though, you you know, I am intrinsically motivated, not being able to go to the gym and be around other people while I was lifting definitely caused me to lose motivation. And so I think that was something where over time it became something where I was affected by external things because I had become an ego lifter. Like, it was something where I needed to have other people see me outlift them, you know? And so I thought that was something that was very interesting and kind of revealing about my own character, you know, a little bit disappointing for me because I was just kind of like, great, you know, I'm clearly very superficial, I guess, and like having that need to like have other people see me do that, I guess. And so that was interesting for me to see. And so I definitely, because of the virus, had stopped training nearly as much as what I used to do. And so that was a little bit sad, but it goes to show how your motivation can change based on external things going on. And so it's important to recognize what drives you to do something, because then that way, when those external things do happen, you can prepare yourself mentally for them and then work past it. I'm gonna clean all this up in a minute. I know it got a little crazy on here. So that kind of leads into the next thing, which is your mindset. It's something where not only does it matter, like, are you positive, because that's going to obviously cause you to be easier to get into the gym, versus if you have kind of a negative outlook on things, it's going to be more difficult to motivate yourself to go. But even beyond that, it becomes a question of, if you were training with someone, do you do better when they are keeping you positive, just pointing out only the good things, or do you do better if you have someone like yelling at you and like screaming and letting you know like, hey, this is horrible, like you need to do this better? And so understanding what kind of positive or negative feedback are going to impact you during your training is also very important, because like, if you do have a personal trainer, they need to know what kind of feedback you respond to. And so like, whenever I've been working with somebody, it's really important for me to understand, okay, if I yell at you, you're gonna mentally shut down. Then I am no longer effective at my job. Versus if I provide you with positive feedback and let you know, okay, these are the things that you're doing really well, now let's focus on some of those weaknesses and get them to the same level, you're gonna respond better to that. But there are also definitely those people that respond really, really well to just being verbally destroyed during training. Or do you prefer to not have any kind of feedback during training, which is also really important? Is it just better for me to just be observing while you're training and not even really have you know that I'm there, and then provide my feedback and thoughts afterward? That's something where getting into doing like video training, it can be a really effective tool, where you can have someone that trains you, but that they're not actually there while you're working out, but they have you videotape yourself while you are doing your training, so that way they can just provide you critiques from different angles afterward, and you don't have to worry about like, oh my god, they're looking at me, because I know that a lot of people struggle with that. I know that when I was first getting into weightlifting, I would go super duper late at night because I was like, okay, no one's gonna be at the gym, no one's gonna see me, and that was really important at the beginning to me, because I was so self-conscious. So those are just some of the things to kind of keep in mind as you're doing this. Alright, so along with mindset, one of the other things to kind of keep in mind is like the use of excuses to either not train or to not do something. And I think the reason why people they come up with excuses has less to do with them not wanting to do something, and really falls more into a couple other categories. The first is just that overarching anxiety that training can bring for someone that does not regularly train. And so I think that's something to kind of bear in mind. Like, if you're one of those people that just always invites people to go and work out with you, because I'm definitely one of those people where I'm like, if you want to come work out with me, like, please feel free. And a lot of the time people will say no. It really, I don't think for many of them it has to do with them not wanting to go and work out, because I've heard them that they do want to. I think it more so falls into that category of that they are anxious to work out with me because there's that fear of judgment that goes along with it, because since I am someone that is fairly fit, there comes that feeling of like, oh, she's gonna judge me, she's gonna look at this and like she's gonna laugh at me. So I think that's like one of the first reasons why someone will come up with an excuse, is because of that fear and anxiety of being judged. I think that also a lot of times people will lose the motivation to go because the goals that they have set for themselves are unrealistic. And that is probably the single most important thing when you are starting any kind of training regime or program, is to recognize what is your end goal, and then what is the time frame in which you want to do that. But then that end goal needs to not be the thing that you are fixating on a daily basis. You need to have, in addition to that overarching goal, you need to have smaller, much more realistic, tangible things that you can be tracking your progress with. Because otherwise, if all you have is that final end state that you're trying to reach, you're not going to see all of the small milestones that you are hitting, because you're only focusing on that end state and you don't feel like you're getting any closer. And so I think that a lot of times when people are starting out and they don't figure out like what are those smaller tangible things, they very quickly lose that motivation to go and train, because they're like, well, I'm not seeing, you know, like I can't see on my body where I've lost like 15 pounds, or I can't see my weight going up. And because they don't have those small things that they can check the box on as they're going through their training, it kind of torpedoes into the ground. And so as long as you have those periodic checks of things, I think that that can greatly help you. And so I tend not to judge people when they do come up with excuses because of that, because I think that it's not so much that they're wanting to just, you know, I mean, but if you don't want to, like, that's also fine. But I'm just saying, like, for a lot of people that do have these goals that they're wanting to achieve, and then they come up with excuse after excuse, I don't necessarily think that that's something where it's 100% that it's their fault. You know, it's my job as a trainer to understand where you're coming from and what is driving you to want to do something. And that kind of falls into the next thing of that there are so many different ways to reach your goal. There's never just one thing that will get you there. I think that that's something that people on occasion lose sight of, is that they think there's only one way to get to what they want. And especially with things like weight loss goals or with building lean muscle mass, there's like hundreds of ways to get to a particular body state. If your goals aren't revolving around a particular sport, if you just have goals in general of like, I want to look a certain way, or I want to have a particular amount of muscular endurance, there's so many ways to get you there. And so I think people also sometimes get frustrated because they think, okay, you know, I want to lose 30 pounds and that means that I have to run 5 miles a day. No, I can have you drop whatever weight you want to drop and have 100 different types of sports that we can do to get you there. And at the end of the day, if you don't like the activities that I am giving you to do, you're not going to do them. And so I have to make sure that I understand what are the types of activities you enjoy doing. So for instance, if you're like, I fucking hate running, well then I'm not going to tell you to go run. Like, that would be asinine. And so it's up to me to understand, okay, what do you enjoy doing? And so if you don't like a particular type of activity, but you have a goal in mind for what you're wanting to achieve, think about other ways of getting to that goal. If it's also something where, let's say that you have particular physical limitations, then okay, awesome, we can work around that. There are so many different things that we can do. And I think a lot of people kind of just get stuck in that mindset of, no, I have to do this one thing to get there. And it's the same thing, like if you're wanting to build muscle mass, that doesn't mean that I need for you to immediately go out and do a 300-pound back squat for me. Like, that's not how that works. We can have you get to that level of musculature with so many different types of things. And so so, you know, and that's part of where talking to a personal trainer can really help, because they can tell you different ways of getting there, and they should recognize that there are many ways to skin a cat, so to speak, right? And so that's just something where it really helps to have an understanding of just what are the end goals versus what do I need to do to get you there. You know, if you immediately get demotivated because I'm not listening to you on the things that you like versus don't like, then I'm not doing my job. That's something where trainers a lot of times also need to kind of check their ego at the door, because what I think and know doesn't really matter at the end of the day. You are the person that matters. I've had tons of times where someone has come up to me and they want me to train them for something. I could just say, yeah, absolutely, I want to make a quick buck, so by all means I'll train you. But that would be doing you and me a disservice, because if my knowledge is not in that particular field that you were wanting to get into, I'm not going to be able to help you get to where you need to go. As a trainer, it can never be about just making money. It needs to be that if I recognize that there's another trainer out there that could do a better job of assisting you, it is my obligation to connect you with that person to help you get to your goal. And that just really connects back to the rant that I had at the beginning of this video, because there are so many people that just care about making a quick buck. That doesn't help anybody, and then you just end up having so many people that have no motivation anymore to do anything fitness related because some asshole trainer cared more about making an extra 20 bucks an hour instead of actually helping that person get where they need to be. Let's move on and stay a little bit on topic with talking about the psychology of sports. One of the things too where I think people can get a little bit frustrated is in the use of repetition during training. And it is something where I think that people kind of get frustrated or bored as they're training, but the use of repetition is manyfold on the benefits that it provides. So first, just by doing drilling of the same movements over and over again, I mean, everyone knows muscle memory, right? That's not a new concept at all. And so you're building that muscle memory to where your body can just kind of do it again and again and again. But the underlying psychological benefits of that drilling are that when it comes time for competition, or it comes time for you to perform potentially above what you think your physical capability is, having that muscle memory gives you the psychological benefit of trusting yourself and having confidence knowing that your body can perform those movements. So for instance, if you're trying to go for a max lift on something, like within Olympic lifting, right? It is critical to have that muscle memory down and have it be good, because as you get heavier and heavier in the weights, your form has to be on point. Otherwise, you're probably not going to hit your lift. And so during competition, it's really important to not only have that muscle memory down, but go into the lift knowing that you can hit that shit. Because if you go into a lift and there is any kind of hesitation on there, you're probably not going to hit it. And so that is something where that's why when you see in competitive weightlifting that people have like these set routines as they're getting ready to set up with the bar. And so you'll kind of see them, and I'll toss in a video here. You see, as I am going up to the bar, I am setting my feet the same way, I am measuring on the bar where my hands need to go, and then I'm getting the appropriate grip on there before I attempt to do the lift. And so part of what that does is it not only makes sure that I am in the correct position, but it is giving my brain a chance to mentally get set for the lift, to build myself up, and it's tuning my body into the cues that it needs to perform that muscle memory action. And so that's why it's so important to, when you're training, do the same thing that you would do in competition. And that goes for literally 100% of sports, because you need to train the way you fight. If you go into something and during your training, you're kind of half-assing it because you're like, well, it's not a competition day, so it's not critical for me to perform to the best of my ability, that's not going to help you when competition time frame comes, because then your body is going to be trained and your mind is going to be trained to be lackadaisical, and you don't want that. But going into training with the mental expectation of, I am going to crush this workout. I am going to, if I don't crush the workout, learn something, at least, from where things went wrong so that I can do it better next time. But no matter what, never go into a workout just tossing it to the side. Every workout that you do, there should be some kind of goal that you have set for yourself prior to the start of the workout. And so having those, again, those small goals, we're seeing again that theme of how important those small goals are with every workout that you do, because that sets the stage for further down the road on whether you're going to be successful or not. I think that is one of those things where confidence really comes into play through the use of repetition. Another thing too that I think people don't always recognize is how important it is, even if you were performing outside of your ability level, to just go into it with confidence. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm gonna go into something and I'm gonna be like, well, I'm confident, so I'm gonna, hit this astronomical lift, and that's obviously not gonna happen. Like, you need to be realistic. But what it does mean is that for something where it's just slightly above your potential ability level, that you go into it with confidence, because that can allow you to push past those plateaus that you might have in training. And so what I mean by that is something where, like, if I'm training somebody and they say, I can't do that, I will acknowledge that. But what that means is that I'm saying you can't do it yet. And that is the key thing on there where I think people limit themselves, is they say, I can't do something, so that means I'm never gonna be able to do that. As a trainer, I have to make sure that you understand you might not be able to do that right now, but that is my job to get you to that point where sometime in the future you will be able to do it. And so I think people tend to limit themselves on what their capabilities are simply because they currently cannot do something. And so you really want to make sure that you recognize anything where you say that you can't do it. There are obviously things where it's unrealistic to say that you would ever be able to do something, like, I'm never going to be able to fly. I don't have wings. But for me to say, I'm never going to be able to snatch. So snatching and clean and jerks are the two Olympic lifts. So snatching for me is inherently difficult because my right shoulder is not great. And so it's difficult for me to catch that weight in a particular way. And so here's an example of where I just look gross while I'm trying to snatch. The bigger thing is for me to say I can't snatch. Well, clearly I can, whether it's pretty or not, I can. It's not that I can't do it. And so I think sometimes it does fall into that category of the mental aspect, where it's not that you can't, it's that you think you can't. And so for me, when I got my first pull-up, it wasn't that the entire time leading up to that I couldn't do it. It was that mentally I was defeating myself, because as soon as it got to that point of like where I was straining to get the last like 6 inches, I was telling myself, oh, well, I guess I'm done. This hurts. I can't do it. I'm straining. That is where the mental aspect comes in. When things get difficult and where it starts to hurt, you have to turn your brain into a different mindset to push past the pain. And that doesn't mean pushing past to the point of injury. And I think that's where novices, when they're first getting into physical training, they confuse the feelings of pain that come with pushing your muscles to a certain point. They confuse that with that they are injuring themselves. That absolutely is something that falls into the category of the mental aspect of training, because things are gonna hurt. The whole way that we build muscle is by breaking it down, and then in the recovery time frame is where you start to build more muscle. You have to tear it down and break it down first before it can essentially rebuild itself and get bigger and stronger. And so I think that's one of those things where it's really up to the person individually and their trainer to get you to push past those mental blocks of it's starting to get uncomfortable and it's starting to hurt. I think also the kind of the final thing that I'll touch on for today for the mental aspect is looking at some of the differences between endurance training versus like burst sport activity, because those are definitely different types of mental resiliency that you need to have to accomplish them. And so kind of where I was talking before about how when I would go out and train for triathlons and for marathons, that it was just hours of me kind of zoning out. That is a different type of mental training versus how I would train to accomplish Olympic lifting or powerlifting type exercises. You know, if I'm going for weightlifting on there, it's a very short period of time where I need to have extreme focus and really extreme confidence as well, and then I can rest immediately thereafter. And so you know that your level of exertion mentally is for a very short period of time, and then you can relax again. And so that's very different than when I'm doing endurance training, where I'm not so much needing that extreme mental focus. For marathons, you can afford yourself the ability to just zone out, to not really be focused on what you're doing beyond just breathing and moving. That is something where it's a different type of training, because you don't need that severe focus. What you do need is the ability to keep going. And so that is different, because it's not so much about having focus, it's more about pushing yourself beyond those feelings of pain. Because like with weightlifting, it's a very short amount of pain, and so you can kind of suffer through it. But with endurance work, it is such extreme extended pain and exertion. And so you have to figure out how to mentally just shut that part of your brain off, to where you no longer listen to your body when it's telling you that it's hurting, because it's gonna be hurting for a really long time. And regardless of whether you've done the appropriate amount of training or not is irrelevant. It will hurt no matter what, because you are going for such extreme distances that your body is gonna break down at some point. And so the type of mental training that you need to do for that versus for weightlifting or like playing a particular sport is very different. And that's part of where you can very clearly see the difference in people that have worked on their mental resiliency for that kind of thing, because they are able to power through regardless of whether they are winning and losing. They will keep maintaining their high level of performance, versus the people that haven't trained their brain as well to handle those levels of extreme stress, and they start to choke and their game breaks down, and then their mental game breaks down even more as their performance breaks down. And so it's kind of one of those quicksand things where like you're fighting against it, but it's just getting worse and worse, and you're sinking more and more into it. And so it's very interesting to see how different sports take different types of mental training and resilience to be effective and to increase your overall performance. So my makeup is done. Again, I could keep going. I have no idea when I'm editing this how long this video is. I can't even talk anymore. But I could legitimately talk about this forever. If you guys enjoyed this topic and you want me to get more into the nitty-gritty, I absolutely can. There have been some really recent professional athletic things that fall into the category of extremely unusual from the psychological aspect that I would love to talk with you guys about. If there's any other things that you guys want me to address, whether that be nutrition, supplements, weightlifting in general, you know, triathlon training, whatever it ends up being, if you guys just want me to talk about whatever else, I'm more than happy to. If you guys like this, give me a thumbs up. I would love that. Toss any comments down there on questions or suggestions that you guys have. If you're dealing with your own type of mental blocks or plateaus that you're trying to work through and you would love some tips, toss it in the comments. I'm more than happy to help out. If you enjoy this content and you want to see more of it, please subscribe. I would love that. I really want to build my community on here and get to know more of you guys. And other than that, just go have a good one.